I'm excited to now introduce Marie Perennès, co-curator of the Olga de Amaral exhibition here at ICA Miami, as well as curator of the Olga de Amaral exhibition at the Fondation Cartier pour la contemporain, with her presentation on Olga de Amaral and architecture. Welcome.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you, ICA Miami and Stephanie, for the organization of this symposium. Before I begin, I just would like to express my deepest gratitude to Olga and to her family for their generosity and invaluable support throughout these past 3 years. I think their encouragement, I'm sure their encouragement and their insight have been really essential in preparing these 2 exhibition projects, first in Paris and then in Miami, and obviously to prepare this lecture. Today I would like to examine, first I'm Paris-based, so pardon my French accent. If you don't understand anything, please don't hesitate to raise your hand. So today I would like to examine the relationship between textile and architecture in the work of Olga de Amaral. As you know, and as we have already heard in the previous lecture, Olga did not approach weaving only as decorative practice, but she transformed it into a spatial language capable of dialoguing, of conversing with architecture, of extending it, and of reshaping it. So my presentation will develop in 3 main parts. First, I would like to very briefly return to the Bauhaus and to the role of Ana Lupas, who was the first to show that textile could be understood not only as decorative surfaces, but as true architectural structure. Then I would like to show how Olga developed her own language in dialogue with modernist architecture and how her woven works expand from the surface to the structure. And finally, I would like to discuss how Olga's works invited to think about the notion of textility and to think about textile not only in architectural in the scale, but also in the ability to transform space through light and perception. So as my colleague Elisa and Christina remind us a bit, everything started a bit with the Bauhaus. In 1999, the Bauhaus School in Germany initiated a very ambitious reflection to place craft practice at the very heart of artistic creation, with the aim of de-hierarchizing, this is a very complex word in English, sorry, mediums. But when in 1920 a weaving workshop was established, it was essentially reserved for women. Men, meanwhile, turned to architecture, to volume, to space, to 3-dimensional construction. And the textile produced at the Bauhaus in the years that follow were still mostly considered for their decorative potential. They were used to soften or to adorn the interior of modernist building, mostly designed by men, by Walter Gropius, by Mies van der Rohe, etc. It's in this context that Ana Lupas played a very decisive role. She was the first to move beyond the divide between textile and architecture, transforming weaving into a meeting point between pictorial abstraction, technology, and built space. A series she created in the 50s, and you can see here on the right, in the 50s and in the 60s, sorry, exemplify this. It's the pictorial weaving series. And in 1957, in a now seminal essay, The Pliable Plane, she wrote, and I quote, if the nature of architecture is the grounded, the fixed, the permanent, then textile is very antithesis. But if, however, we think of the process of building and the process of weaving and compare the work involved, we will find similarities despite the vast difference of scale. Both construct a whole from separate parts that retain their identity, a manner of proceeding fundamentally different from that of working metal or clay, where parts are absorbed into an entity. And she also went further, arguing that textile and architecture share the same origin in primitive nomadic shelter, the pliable plane. For her, textile are portable architecture. They are supple, lightweight, adaptable, and designed to accompany the movement. She insisted that weaving was not only a decorative surface, but a logical process of construction, as you can also see on this illustration from a book on weaving published in 1965. So 2 systems of thread interlaced at right angle to create a 3-dimensional structure with density and with thickness. Unlike a painting, a textile has no front and has no back. It can be reversible, it can be double, it can be draped, it can be suspended freely in the space. It is mobile and it exceeds traditional boundaries between the arts. This vision materialized in visionary works she created, such as the free hanging room divider series, you can see here, presented in 1949 at a MoMA retrospective, the first ever dedicated by the museum to a textile artist. These hanging panels are inspired by a study of pre-Columbian weaving, and they are not decorative fabric, but they are true architectural elements. They structure the space, they play with the transparency, as you can see. They are porous, and they invite viewers to think of textile as modular architecture. Within the MoMA exhibition, the curator, Philip Johnson, explored their 3-dimensionality. So in the exhibition design, for instance, he showed the capacity to engage one with another, the opacity, the ability to generate rhythm and movement. He designed a total textile environment using the 3 hanging room dividers, as you can see on the picture on the left. So thus, I think we can say that in Annie Halbert's works, textile became, in a way, already architecture. And it's precisely along this path that Olga de Amaral will go on to develop her own language. Another and last but important example of this integration of textile and architecture is this project by Annie Halbert. She completed it in 1956 or 57, sorry, I don't remember, mid-50s, for the Temple Emmanuel in Dallas. She designed panels to both protect and reveal the Torah. The chosen color, green, blue, and gold, echoes the geometric stained glass windows you can see on the left photos, and the brick motif of the sanctuary wall behind the piece. To respond to the commission, Albers proposed a solution both economical and innovative, weaving on sliding wooden panel. This requires less fabric and allow her to use silver lurex, producing this very shimmering and luminous effect. The pattern she created, following the rigid Bauhaus grid, as we can see, is regular but slightly shift, seems to rise upward and to draw the eye toward the sky. This project, I think, once again demonstrates how for Annie Halbert's textile and architecture were inseparable. The piece really structured the space, giving it rhythm and light. So I think it's this legacy that Olga would expand and then will transform into her own artistical language. So now let's move to Olga, and to not overlap the previous presentation, I will be very brief. As you understood, Olga began a study first in Bogotá in Colegio Mayor de Cundinamarca, in 1951 in architectural drawing, and then in 1954, as violence escalated in Colombia, she moved to North America to continue education at Cranbrook under the guidance of Marianne Strangel. Well, I skipped this part, you already know everything. And then, when she returned in Bogota in '55, she founded her own studio. She employed Colombian weavers, worked with local fibers, and produced carpet and textile for interior decoration. I would like to highlight the fact that at that time, Bogota was undergoing a construction boom, and the demand for interior design was really growing. And that's exactly what I want to point out. It's the fact that she was really connected with architects of her generation. Christina mentioned it a bit, with key figure of Colombian modernism, and I especially would like to insist on the architecture of Rogelio Salmona, as it seems to me that there is a connection between his architecture and the way Olga moved toward more architectural forms. So Rogelio Salmona was born in Paris in 1929 and raised in Colombia. He is a central figure in Colombian modernist architecture. He was trained at the National University. He worked with Le Corbusier in Paris after fleeing Bogota during the violent unrest following the assassination of Jorge Eliezer Gaitán in 1948, a period we call La Violencia, and which led to the destruction of a large part of the capital. When he returned to Bogota at the end of the 50s, Salmona played a major role in the reconstruction of the city. It chose a noble and inexpensive material, the red brick, which today still defines the city architectural identity. And I like to quote Gabriel García Márquez, who once said, "I don't invent anything, I write, and I'm writing what I'm living." And Salmona's architecture, too, very simply, elevated what already existed without relying on costly and imported material for the reconstruction. The work of Rogelio Salmona also consistently emphasized collective, democratic, open space, patio, plaza, designed to encourage gathering, play, conversation, and always in dialogue with the mountains surrounding the city of Bogota. One of his most famous projects is obviously the Torres del Parque, which exemplify this vision. So they are modern housing towers whose curving form seems to bow before the mountain, and as we can see on this photo. Another example is the Facultad de Ciencias Humanas, designed by Salmona much later, but as an open and permeable space. Also very significant, this house, Casa Refugio, designed by Salmona in 68-69, for Olga de Amaral and for Jim, her husband, and for their family. So the house is located against the mountainside in Bogota, as you can see on the first photo on the left. The second image is a more recent view of the interior, but what I wanted to highlight with that photo is the fact that the light openings through the windows seems to draw nature into the house. And this house became the setting for many photographs Olga took of her own works. That's why I show you this magnificent piece, Hojarasca Blanca y Seca, which evoke autumn leaves, and which is here is lying down in the garden of Olga on this sandy stone of the ends, almost blending with the nature. It's also the case of this amazing piece, Adherencia, which looks like a dense cluster of tubular strands lying on a rocky slope, like a climbing plants, and whose color recall a bit the Paramo, a very specific ecosystem found on the ends high plateaus. In other pieces, Olga seems to respond directly to Salmona architectural brick construction. It's the case with this adobe gris, but also with this beautiful colmena rosada, whose color and form really recall the one of a brick wall. So during the 60s and the 70s, I think we can say that Olga de Amaral really engaged with architects of her generation while inventing a new language that transcended textile, a language in which weaving became porous and merged with both architecture, as we can see here, and obviously nature. To fully understand this evolution, I really briefly would like to place it in the international context. So as Elisa mentioned it, in the 60s, a real revolution in textile art was underway. In 69, in 62 began the first Lausanne Biennale, and this Biennale and exhibition profoundly reshaped the global fiber art landscape. Initially, tapestry in the Biennale remained really tied to tradition, so Elisa mentioned it, large wall hanging woven on the loom and serving mostly as decorative panel, but very quickly artists began to break free from this tradition in a way, and surfaces became rougher, material more diverse. They start using scissor, linen, horsehair, and to occupy the space. A first turning point for me is in 62 when Polish artist Magdalena Abakanowicz presented this composition of white foam. So it's woven on the loom, obviously, but it's 6 meters tall, it's monumental, it's radical, and it's totally abstract. So it's no longer a narrative tapestry, but it's a sculptural presence. And by the next edition in 69, the Biennale has changed the criteria of admission. Embroidery and non-traditional material were accepted, for instance. So for the fourth Biennale, Magdalena Abakanowicz unveiled this amazing series of her, the Harbakan. You have an example here. So it's a vast and suspended form in sisal. I don't know how you say that in English, sorry. A big red volume that filled cubic meters of space. In the same spirit, the Swiss artist Else Gioch created this virtual spatial element. And it's a modular composition of suspended frames. And she says about it that it is dematerialized woven planes as they are producing infinite chromatic variation and shadow effect, a true architecture of thread, end of quote. So it's in this context that in 67, Olga was selected for the first time at the Lausanne Biennale and was creating this entrelazado series, this interlaced works that you can see here and that Elisa told us about. I think what is interesting for my presentation in terms of architecture in that piece is obviously the fact that the way she interlaced the woven strip allowed light to pass through and to break for the first time with the idea of a textile with a front and with a back. You can really see it also in that picture. So this moment is really crucial in Olga's career, and the Lausanne Biennale really opened the way for fiber art to be three-dimensional, sculptural, and architectural. I will not mention very long this famous exhibition, since it has already been discussed, but let me simply recall that after the Lausanne Biennale, this exhibition in 69 in MoMA was really decisive in affirming the place of fiber art within the fine art. It's in this international context that Olga began to reconsider the wall itself. She was trying really to free the tapestry from the subordination to the wall and to give it spatial autonomy. A first solo exhibition featured a series called Muros Tejidos, Woven Wall. And it's, for me, the second very important shift in her work, because all these woven walls are suspended from the ceiling, as you can see. They are really tracing line. They are defining gateways in a way. They are orienting the visitors' movement. They function as partition of the space, as columns, as portals. And the presents are both massive and also floating, as you really can tell from these two images. So with these two works, Olga really, after the room dividers of Annie Albers, proposed a new vision of textile and architecture. Textile walls as sensitive and tactile separation that did not exclude like concrete modernist architecture, but that invite to almost go through. This research obviously culminate in the mid-70s, when the architect John Portman commissioned Olga this monumental work, Gran Muro, for the atrium of the Peachtree Plaza Hotel in Atlanta, then the tallest hotel in the world. So you can see it here. For this immense cylindrical space that you can see, Olga conceived a piece that will, and I quote, capture and reflect light. She used horsehair. You can see samples she sent to John Portman here. And the horsehair is a material that allows her to scale up to make her work really monumental. The result is this immense Gran Muro, 16 panel, joined together vertically, so nearly 35 meter high. So I think it's like 115 foot, something like this. And I really like this specific photo when you can see Olga de Amaral on the ladder. She is trying to envision, to see the piece, and to take a bit more space to see it as a whole. She envisioned the composition, and you can really tell from this drawing, with irregular relief, flatter along the edge and denser at the center, as she wrote in a letter to John Portman to explain the work, so that the work seems to at once fused with the wall and emerging from it, as I quote from that letter. And with the help of her studio assistant, she produced thousands of rectangular, of almost monochrome strips sewed together. So the result is really like looking like a carpet of fallen leaves or brick walls, as you want to see it. And I think this almost overwhelming verticality demonstrates really that textile could compete with the scale of monumental architecture, which leads us also to the concept that I would like to develop about Olga of textility. This photograph from '69 capture Olga at the Machu Picchu, probably a bit after or during the trip she made in Peru with the World Craft Council. She's seated on the rock. She seems so small in the frame, with the ruin of the Machu Picchu behind her, like a vast woven mantle of stone in a way. And this image encapsulates part of a journey and of a fascination for vernacular and pre-Columbian architecture. She grew up in the region of Antioquia in Colombia, a region known for its colorful facade and its adobe house. And Olga always said she was deeply marked by vernacular architecture, by the popular form of this architecture. And by how builders could adapt to local resources with both practicality but also poetry. And in the 60s, this reflection was enriched by Bernard Rudowski's book, Architecture Without Architects, from '64, which celebrates vernacular, anonymous, and spontaneous architecture and challenged the idea that such forms were primitive. For Rudowski, they embody creativity, and he pointed to sites like Machu Picchu or like Monte Alban, sites we know Olga visited herself. And this led us to what I wanted to show you is this series she called Entornos Quietos. They are made of vertically pressed textile strips. And there is one of them currently on view, so I can't only incite you to experience it, sorry. These works produce undulating striation. I don't know if you can feel it on this picture, on this photo, that really blur the distinction between front and back. And some writers even say that they recall Inca architectural terraces, and I think they became neither wall or sculpture, but truly textile space, because they play with that moiré effect and create shifting patterns, shadow cast on the ground. The use of horsehair give them also a sensual and very material presence. To describe this sensation, the art historian Victoria Mitchell has used the term textility. It's the idea of textile as intermediary surface, linking body, space, and architecture. And applied to construction, textility proposes a fiber-based vision of space, one that is not only visual, but also tactile, sensitive, and inhabited by the matter itself. Later in her career, Olga expanded this exploration of what today Victoria Mitchell calls textility, I think, with a series, beautiful series called Estelas. These large works begin with a woven base, then they are layered with gesso, as you can see on the two photographs on the left, with Japanese paper, and finally with gold or silver leaf. Each layer left its mark. You can really see the textile grid, the paper texture, and the metallic brightness of the piece. And this process also allows her to create these beautiful geometrical patterns on it. These works, I think, and I hope, and I'm sure she will, but Susan will explain us a bit more this sacred dimension after. But Olga herself say about the stones of Machu Picchu and of this archaeological site of San Agustin, a stone holds the secret, and I quote, sorry, a stone holds the secret of the universe. Together or separately, stones bring an answer. With their size and dignity, they link earth to sky, flesh, and to spirit. To sky, flesh, to spirit. End of quote. And I think the stelas obviously exemplify very well this thought. They are standing here as totem, as stellar stone, as stellae. They are suspending slightly from the floor, and they really appear as gateways between matter, spirit, time, and space. And as a conclusion, I think it's important to understand that from the earliest works, Olga approached textile as architectural construction. A large horsehair and wool pieces were volume, structure, that could really stand upright and define space physically. But over time, however, a focus shift maybe toward what we can call today textility, and towards surfaces that transform space, not through the volume, but through the texture, through the light, and to invite the viewer to move around them, to really perceive them in their full complexity. Golden works such as the Alchemia series or the Estelas really exemplify this. This is exactly what we wanted to highlight both in the exhibition at Fondation Cartier in Paris and here in Miami. For this, we invited the architect, the French and Lebanese architect Lina Gottme, to help us design the space. In Paris, she created a landscape of slate stone. You can see it on this drawing here. Oh, sorry, on the left. Establishing a dialogue between indoor, outdoor, and the artworks, as if the piece were placed on a rocky mountain, as the Hojarasca photo I showed you earlier. And in the lower level of the exhibition, Lina drew from the spiral motif found in some of Olga's works to guide the visitors through an enveloping space where the pieces were suspended. And it was a wonderful way, I think, to narrate the artist's works and literally to weave the space of Fondation Cartier to create a real sensory space. You can see here photographs of the lower floor and here of the upper floor at Fondation Cartier. And obviously here at ICA Miami, Lina Gottme also envisioned a wonderful project, a vertical forest where the work seems to grow organically within the gallery, and which is a direct reference to Olga's own source of inspiration and to a special link to Colombian architecture. So, and I will finish my lecture on that. This perspective of envisioning weaving as a spatial practice resonates a lot today with museum debates we had at Fondation Cartier, for instance, about de-hierarchizing the arts and re-evaluating practice long marginalized. And I really think Olga de Amaral reminds us that textiles are kind of universal language, one that can articulate volume, matter, light, and space, and can always converse with architecture. So, thank you.